Hello and welcome. You are watching Cryptic Creations, and today in this video we want to talk again about the religion created God delusion. We have talked about this at least once previously. The link to that older video will be in the description, but you will probably find this video to be more instructive. Now, what is the basic motivation for this video? It's just simply seeing that. Well, we'll get into it. Let's start. Let's start here. So, let's define some things. What we are not doing in this video. This video is not about attacking atheism, though as I extrapolate on some of the points, you may hear me saying some things about it, but that's not the main focus of this video. This video is not about attacking atheism. This video is not about defending religion. I am not a Christian. I am not any I don't practice any ism. I have my own method of figuring out divine reality, and it has only a loose association with the world's major religions. Now, this video is about proving the point that the idea of God does not come from religion. The complementary statement is that religion was built up around the idea of God with spiritual practices and shamanism, as well as early stages of civilization being factors of the construction of organized religious belief systems. What are the reasons the assumption that religion created God are made? Who is making these claims, and what evidence is there to support them? Obviously, we know that they're made by atheists, and possibly also agnostics, people in the middle who just don't believe that organized religion is warranted. They may believe that God could exist, but they're not willing to look at the details here. So reasons the claim might be made, the claim that religion comes before God, that God was just, you've heard this before, governments of ancient times created religion to control the people, and God is just an artifact or a construct that either goes along with or came out of the religious institutionalization within ancient culture and society. Now, so we've got that we have the pervasiveness of organized religion. So it makes it seem like God has no, or rather the idea of God has no independent existence outside and away from religion. Now, number two, the relative difficulty in defining spirituality and the fact that spirituality is not institutionalized in society, at least to the degree of organized religion. So it's like, even though there are people who believe in God but don't practice a religion, it's not institutionalized, so it kind of doesn't have the same effect whenever people who are arguing against religion and against the existence of God tend to overlook. Moreover, number three, usually people go, whenever you experience the rejection of religion but retain the belief in God, in that personal experience, it creates the impression, the appearance, and the perception that denying religion comes first, and then you retain the belief in God. So, via experience, it appears as though religion precedes God. So that's a subtle, somewhat subtle point to make. And then fourthly, we have that for those who are arguing against the existence of God, namely atheists, and that's not personally going into attacking atheists or anything, that's just stating this fact. It's simply easier to assume that religion created God, and then that makes any, well, it ignores, it totally negates and subordinates any need to directly address spirituality in and of itself and standing alone apart from religion. So again, if spirituality comes out of religion, then it's secondary and doesn't have to directly be addressed. And if the atheist can deny or disprove religions, organized religions, which isn't really that hard, then they feel that they have, foregone and don't need to do anything about spirituality or the idea of God existing. Now, it's a gross oversimplification of the issue. Now, so yeah, we know that famous atheists such as Richard Dawkins have made a living doing just what we assert in this video is invalid and untrue, namely presuming to disprove the possible existence of God by finding errors in various religions, particularly Christianity. So it's easy to disprove a religion, but just because you find some flaws, some major flaws in a religious belief system, that doesn't disprove the existence of God. It just doesn't. And it just disproves the way in which that religion purports to assert the nature of God. It just means that that version, at most, it just means that that version of God is untrue, but at least it just only means that the belief system is wrong. But again, you have the proposition God exists. It's either true or false if you agree on a basic working definition of God. Now, clearly, finding logical flaws in the Bible, which I have not prepared to go into, but you can look them up yourselves. That doesn't mean, assuming that more than one person see this video, right? But it doesn't affect AFFECT. It does not affect the existence of God. If you want to disprove or even to start attempting to disprove the existence of God, you have to get deep into logical arguments that are not easy to disprove. So generally speaking, there is little to no notice given to non-religious logical arguments for the existence of God, as there is generally no clear and decisive way to prove or disprove them. So the atheist will go with that low-hanging fruit of disproving something in the Bible, disproving something in the Quran. The sun sets in a pool of water or something, like, oh no, it's not true. And so the overgeneralization is made that defeating religion defeats God, when that is simply intellectual laziness. It is dishonest, and they either know that they're doing it or they don't care, and they're misleading you. If you are an atheist or are on the fence, find somewhere in Dawkins' books or Dawkins' debates where he says anything about a possibility of God existing apart from this entrenchment in religious establishments. He cannot, I could, prove me wrong, but my basic assumption is that he cannot conceive of a God apart from religious establishment. Okay? And it could be only partially correct. That could only be like 50, 60, 70, 80% correct. Like maybe he does address some logical arguments, but there's not enough of it. And there is this oversimplification, this generalization fallacy that when you disprove a religion, you disprove the existence of God. And I'm here to tell you that is just simply not the case. And however, we are not concerned with presenting any such logical, non-religious arguments here. We're not going to talk about them, powerful though they may be, but are instead tasked with attempting to persuade the viewer that the idea of God almost certainly precedes religion, not just by, decades or centuries, but by thousands and tens and possibly even up to or exceeding 100,000 years. Now, by association, this validates and makes relevant such non-religious arguments and assumptions and makes the atheist job all the more daunting. In other words, like if we can show that that the idea of God precedes religion, in fact, then it just makes the atheist job like so much harder because they have to address like non-religious arguments. Now, how can we go about attempting to establish and indicate, sorry, my neck hurts, but that God precedes religion? We propose a series of everyday situational extrapolations that God might exist, that can theoretically be made at any time up to and including the point in history at which anatomically modern man is said to have evolved. In other words, we propose that the idea of God is potentially and quite likely as old as man himself. Furthermore, we define modern man, apart from the animal kingdom, as the point in time for which humanoids conceived the proposition God exists, and we will call this event divine insemination, or the mental pregnancy. Extrapolation technique 1, extrapolation from death. So imagine that you're in France. You're in France during the last ice age, and we are some Cro-Magnon. We have just buried Uncle Og, and we are sitting there during the towards the end of the burial ritual and the burial ceremony, and we're just sitting there by the campfire, and we're talking. And we acknowledge that Uncle Og is dead. We acknowledge that we miss him. We acknowledge that it's sad that he died. And then we get on to ourselves and we start saying, we wish that we didn't have to die ourselves. Like we say, we're going to die one day, but I don't want to die. But you know that you will one day. And then in the human rebellion and obstinance of, if you like, of hard facts of nature, the mind will then jump in this instance, in this example, this theoretical example, we are saying that immortality extrapolates from pontification on mortality. It's just simply the antithesis. And again, just simply the fact that you see death all around you in the Stone Age, and you don't want to have to face it, but you have to, but the mind just keeps trying to escape it. It's only one extra step to saying, what if I didn't have to die? Or what if you didn't have to die? Or what if, what if there was a being that doesn't die? If there was a being that never dies, then that being would have the quality of immortality. And again, I am telling you, it is simply a logical step from thinking about mortality. Immortality comes from thinking about how shitty mortality is, period. It does not, and it happened 50,000 years ago, okay? It didn't come from the Bible telling you that God is immortal and eternal and omniscient and omnipresent. Like it just simply doesn't happen that way. And again, the idea of God is the core around which religions are built up over time. And you can extrapolate from mistakes. Cousin Jog tripped on the hunt and fell down the ravine, and he broke his ankle. That was a mistake. He should have been watching where he was going. If he had, he wouldn't have broken his ankle. He made a mistake. You stubbed your toe last week. That was a smaller mistake, but you're just sitting there thinking like, some people are more careful than others. Some people make more mistakes than others. Some people make really big mistakes and they have catastrophic results. But again, you can just extrapolate from making mistakes to never making mistakes. And that is perfect in action. If there was a being who never made mistakes, then they would be perfect in the actions that they take. They never did anything that harmed them. And it's really closely related to immortality. Maybe it could be like an avenue of immortality. Like if it was like impossible for you to do something that hurt yourself, even in like your bodily actions of like your digestive system and everything, like if your whole body and everything that was inside and outside that you did and that your body did, if it was all like non-detrimental, then you would be perfect in action, and then you would attain immortality if you were trying to not hurt yourself. Now, extrapolation from relative knowledge and understanding. Grandfather Bug. I'm just like coming up with random names that I assume sound sort of cavemanish. Like Grandfather Bug, he is wise. If you want to find the elk, listen to him. He can tell you how to find big game so that so that our tribe will not starve during the cold, hard winter. He knows how to find the mammoths. He knows how to avoid the saber-toothed tigers. He's wise. He has knowledge. Then you look at your cousin, and he's dumb, or relatively speaking dumb. He hardly ever finds the game. He hardly ever he hardly ever makes the kill. His skill and his knowledge are limited. But Grandfather Bug, he knows more. But then you just you cognize this spectrum in your mind of relative knowledge. And you're like, hey, he knows a little bit. He knows more. He knows more than him. Well, who knows the most? Again, like anatomically modern humans go back, 30, 50, maybe even 100,000 years. And so you simply cannot discount the theoretical extremely high likelihood that people were able to conceive of a being that knows everything, simply because of how important it is to know things in the at any time, but especially in this example, in the ancient times, in the dream time, during the last ice age, people didn't know, or if you knew how to make a good spear, if you knew how to track game, that was like a fucking genius. That was golden knowledge. And again, people aren't stupid. Religion did not create God. God evolved as this idea through various divine attributes. This one here is omniscience. Omniscience simply comes from brainstorming on the nature of relative knowledge and then postulating a being who knows everything. It's just that simple. And this happened 100,000 years ago, my friends. God was not created by religion. So, and again, that just makes the idea of like studying. See, this is what we're doing here is we're trying to inject something that's going to be meaningful, and from the enemy's perspective, from the atheist perspective, that's going to be difficult. And why do I say enemy? I say that because I have become thoroughly convinced that God is real, but yet I do not espouse any single religion. So anytime an atheist like Richard Dawkins gets up there on the stage and starts griping and squawking and bellowing about Christianity, that's like water off of a duck's back to me. It means absolutely nothing. And extrapolation from relative strength, that was kind of similar with the hunt and whatever. And so you can kind of go off of different rabbit holes here, but just to say quickly about this, the god of war, the god of the hunt, well, the hunt came before the god of war, obviously, but the god of the hunt was manifested through personifying a theoretical being who always finds the game. You pray to that being. You extrapolate, then you personify, then you emulate, and then worship in an organized fashion only comes later. You know, they wouldn't have, 30,000 years ago in Europe, they weren't like, praying in the modern sense, but like it was just a thinking about. It was like a remembering in the same way that you would remember your ancestors who were able to find the game. Emulation, worship comes way later, way, 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 way later. And then finally, we talk in terms of a matrix of divine inception through which the idea of God is really crystallized around the birth, at least in terms of like the timeline, around the birth of civilization. So by the time you get to like 10,000, 987, 6,000 years ago, it's really becoming more formalized, okay? Around what? Or centered inside of what? Inside of a matrix of things like UFO or possibly even angelic encounters. As if you watch my channel, then you know the only difference between aliens and angels is a level of development and a direction that they came from. It's the whole thing that you probably hear about, like, oh, aliens aren't coming from other star systems. They're actually coming from other dimensions or higher dimensions. But again, that's just a level of development, and beings coming down out of heaven, involuting instead of evolving, coming down out of the divine highest dimensional realms. That's those beings. That's why you put them together. It's not one or the other, it's both. Trust me. And so that obviously, like, you see UFO, you see angels, these are heavily influencing the proposal that God exists. Dreams and stories stories told around the campfire tens of thousands of years before the birth of writing, dreams, dreams about creation, about a being, your subconscious putting things together and giving you ideas that you initially perhaps didn't even consider consciously. Subconscious will feed them to you. Search for meaning. We're always trying to find meaning in things. And, atheists like to say that, oh, it's just like, oh, God, the whole like God did it. But you know what? That actually is essentially the case. Like, God did do it. It's just like how he did it was in a scientific way. Like, because we believe in God, but we believe in divine evolution as well. And like, so the general meaning of life is to evolve into God. And so mystery and explanation, kind of similar to search for meaning, but I'm running out of time. They're not exactly the same, but I'm not fully prepared, I suppose, to parse them out. Let's see, mystery and explanation. Yeah, that's like all the like mysteries. You might see that's like seeing something that you don't understand and then trying to give an explanation for it. And then searching for meaning is slightly different because it's not necessarily like you're seeing something that you don't understand. It's actually just asking the question, why are we here? So they're related, but they're not the same. So that's good. And then shamanic visions, entheogens, psychedelics of all kinds, and the rituals that built up around their use eventually turning into religions. But the shamanic visions and then the dream visions, shamanic visions, dream visions, shamanic visions, everything feeding in together. And then extrapolation, which is our customized word here, which is basically just like, thinking logically about the way things are, the way that we wish that they were, the way that we want them to be, the quest for comfort, the eventual quest for perfection in all aspects of human life. The quest for that, and that very quest, though we don't realize it, is the quest for God. And in this matrix, I propose the idea of God is really crystallized. And again, are people like uh, are people like Richard Dawkins unqualified, disingenuous, both, or neither? I'll leave it to you because that's the entire gambit of possibilities right there. So when it comes to this subject, and you know, as we said, it's just a lot easier to believe, or I mean, to ignore and to not think deeply enough. Like, because what I just said, everything that I just said and laid out about how ancient man came up with God through extrapolation and then through, in a more general sense, through the divine matrix, it should be clear. But again, I will leave it to you to decide. But to me, at least, it's crystal clear that God precedes religion. And that if that be the case, if that is the case, then it must be addressed. You can't just attack religious-minded people. You should, but that's not all you should do. And in fact, like people who believe, see, that's the funny thing is that like at the end of the day, I'm actually on Dawkins' side when it comes to attacking dogmatic religious belief systems, but it's just we're attacking them together, but for a different reason. So I actually have, and I'm glad that I said that, realized that. I didn't have that prepared, but that is actually a fact. But So it's either God precedes religion, religion precedes God, or they emerge simultaneously in the attempt to control the people. That's the sort of like pessimistic, like, you know, socialistic, communistic view that, oh, it's just purely control. And no, these people have not thought things through. And once they see what I have shown them here, then they will realize the error of their ways, and they will at the very least realize that their job is not done, that they have a lot, because you have to address this. Like, well, if it's like an ancient thing, like if proposing the idea of God is somehow like tied into the very definition of being human, why should that be delusional? Because that would mean that our core, at our core, we are delusional. You want to accept that? And again, I haven't, like I specifically said that we're not going to go into uh, any number of like logical arguments, non-religious arguments for the possible existence of God that I have and that have been out there for thousands of years. So just chew on that. And finally, despite claims that atheism precedes religion, the proposition God exists, as with any proposition, always precedes the doubt or the affirmation thereof. So there is no way that atheism precedes belief in God, much less religion, because some atheists will say that like the default nature of man is atheist, but that's non-belief, not disbelief. That's just a lack of belief. It's a lack of being presented with the proposition. So the proposition comes before the affirmation or the doubt thereof. So regardless of the fact that in general the proposition would likely have been formulated in a logical path leading towards affirmation, only later to have been denied, we will give the benefit of the doubt and say that at most they meaning theism and atheism, and I mean theism in the non-religious sense, like just believing that God exists versus believing that he does not exist, we will get that at most they emerged simultaneously as a result of the formulation of the proposition. That concludes this presentation. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you got something useful out of it. And if you did, then please subscribe, like, share, comment. And if you're feeling really generous, I would invite you to help me out monetarily. I have a Bitcoin address and a Cash App. I am $ Cryptic Creations at Cash App. If you would like to send me a donation, I would greatly appreciate it. I have yet to receive a single donation, full disclosure, but I know that if I just keep up with what I'm doing, one day that'll change. Thank you very much if you made it to the end of this video, and I will see you in the next one. Take care.